Beyond the Ghostlight.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
What's going on, everyone? Good to see faces.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a lovely post-Beltane day.
Whew.
It's about 80 degrees.
Yep.
It's just a perfect May day.
It is a perfect May day.
It really, really is. I've started my garden, kind of. I've only got the insides so far. I've only got like some little sprouts going on, hanging out there. So today I went outside and like tried to map out where the garden's gonna actually go and stuff. So I'm really excited. Yay, May.
That's exciting. We did a whole bunch of gardening yesterday too. No Venus flytraps yet, but some new flowers and some veggies. We've actually been doing the indoor raising things from seeds for a while, so kind of cool. Yeah, look at everybody's green thumbs. Appreciate it. See you out there.
Yeah.
Good to see
I'm just glad this camera doesn't capture any of my indoor plants, because if you want me to look after your pets, I am golden. You want me to look after your plants, better say goodbye to your plants.
all good, right? We murdering plants is kind of a forte of mine too. So yeah, hopefully we're better at keeping them alive. We'll find out. Y'all, it has been actually kind of a nice month in general since we saw you last. Been working on a lot of things within the Ibis Theater, and we are so excited to have, so excited. I'm gonna bang things. So excited to have a very special guest and a dear friend on, David Ramón Zayas, a playwright, actor, director, amazing forensicator and teacher, living out of Philadelphia, but originally from our old stomping grounds at EMU. So, welcome on, David.
Let's bring him on.
Well, thank you.
Hello,
Hi, Luna.
Hey, so good to see you. You're living in Philly these days. You've got some dogs. You, Jeff, dog dads, right? Am I right?
You are right about most of that. I'm actually living in Harrisburg these days, which is the capital of Pennsylvania.
Oh.
You wanted to know that. Beautiful. We have so many trees here. There's like a thing called the Green Belt, which is this 20-mile biking path and wooded path loop that goes around the city. And so we live like a block from the Green Belt, and it's really awesome because you drive 10 minutes one direction, you're in downtown. You drive 10 minutes the other direction, you are in the middle of the woods. And it's a perfect mix of locale for us.
No, that sounds gorgeous.
Yeah,
Jeez,
awesome.
taking it up a step. I love it.
Yeah.
So I know you've been working on a few projects in general, but one that I was really wanted to start us talking about, was really interested in, is the actually reason I reached out to you was a project that you've been working on about your journey of reclaiming some of your cultural identity in a play called I Don't Speak Spanish. Can you walk us through a little bit what that project's been like for you, and what that's been like?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And also just real quick, hi, Nick. Hi, Victoria. I said hi to Luna earlier and not hi to either of you. Hello.
Hi, David.
You.
We're just deeply offended. We're just going to ignore you for the rest of the show. We'll just Can you believe that, Tori? Can you?
It was crazy, right?
Rude.
Yeah.
No, it's been overwhelming in some ways. It's been really rewarding in a lot more ways. This project started, I guess, back in 2017 is when the kernel of this idea was first forming, and it was because, so as the title suggests, I don't speak Spanish. A very, 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 very limited access to the language, and what I just personally had always felt throughout most of my life was that made me less of a Latino. And my background is specifically I'm a Mexican on my mom's side and Puerto Rican on my bio dad's side. And so like that's the cultural inheritance I have, but not having the language itself has made me feel very like disconnected from it, which was not that cool when I'm grown up in a primarily white community. And so it was made very clear to me from a young age that like, I am not white, I am something else. But I kind of didn't have ever really like a full picture of what that other thing was. And then when I would meet other Latino people who did speak Spanish, or when I would see representation of Latino voice and Latino characters, you know, so much of it is steeped in that Spanish that I didn't feel connected to that either. So I've just sort of spent a lot of my life in this kind of weird like X zone of neither, but also both, but also neither. And so it was just, but I also always thought it was just my own personal anxiety. Like it was just this weird, like, you know, there's just this struggle that I was having on my own. And then my brother said to me out of the blue one day, he was like, you know what? I'm sick of feeling like a fraud. I'm going to learn Spanish. And him using that word in particular, like feeling like a fraud, was like, I knew exactly what he meant. And I urged him to keep going. And he talked about like, you know, his feelings about it and this weird look he gets from other Mexicans or other Latinos when he has to tell them that he doesn't speak Spanish. It's like this mixture of contempt and pity and disappointment that's unique from other looks I've received from other people in my life, but like consistent in its application.
Right.
And so when he shared this with me, that's when I realized like, oh, okay, this is not just me in my own head about a thing. This is a real thing that at least one other person feels. So we both of us were like, why don't we speak Spanish? Why, like, where did it leave our family? So we started like asking our mom and I've since now spoken with my uncles, my grandmother, and just kind of more about that journey through our family history of how the language sort of became kind of phased out for us. And as I was learning about that history, I was sharing it with my husband and close friends. And I'm like telling them all the stuff that I've learned. And Jeff, we're both theater people, and he's like listening. It's like, this is a story. This is a play. There's something here. And I was like, okay, you're probably right. But it also, at the time when it was first like being thought of, it felt also much bigger than what I was prepared to do at the time, or you know, I also didn't feel like I have a right to tell it because of that very like anxiety that's been you know, the source of this story is kind of keeping me from telling it in the first place. So now we're in quarantine and have once all of, you know, most of my creative energy in most of 2020 was spent on survival and just making sure that, you know, we have the food that we need, or do we have income? Like if this happens, what are we going to do? If this happens, what are we going to do? So, you know, that wasn't really a time to be creating, but once we kind of got a little more stabilized ourselves, realized like, all right, maybe it's time to just dive in and make this happen. So yeah, I started work in earnest back in November and interviewed over 30 people so far, and continuing about their own experiences with language and where it intersects with identity, with race. And what has been really eye-opening is just how consistent these feelings are across people, no matter and this is not to say 100% of the people that I've spoken with have been dealing with the same anxiety, but a very large percentage of them have. And what I found most surprising was that feeling of disconnect and of fraudulence. Is that a word? It sounds a little.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Fraudulence sounds right.
Yeah, but that it doesn't seem to go away with mastery of the language, which I expected it would. But so many people. The first person that I spoke with who was fluent in Spanish, who I was speaking to. I was interviewing him for another aspect of the project, which is Latin American philosophy, and I wanted to speak with a Latin American philosophy professor, like more about the field, and just so because when I'm writing characters who work in that field, so it's not like I'm a philosopher and this is what I do. It's coming from a real place. So my intention was only to ask him really about his world in philosophy, and he's like speaking Spanish, like as we're talking, and like saying Spanish names like really fluently, and I'm like, please don't hate me. And then I just on a whim, I was like, all right, well, I also have these other questions that I ask people, and I'll ask them to you too. And he connected fully with what I was describing, and shared his own experiences of like kind of feeling less than in circles, like where it's like academic Spanish is happening, because he grew up speaking it in a home, but now that he's like in these research circles and people are reading papers fully in Spanish, and he'll be in the room like not really catching all of it, and feeling also like he can't speak up, because if he did, then he wouldn't be Mexican enough. And so it was just like it was really eye-opening seeing how many people like still have those feelings, even so they're not fully connected to the language, even though they are. It just seems a little bigger than that.
Right. Like this widespread imposter syndrome that keeps developing even as you're learning and connecting, and it sounds like that just doesn't go away. It's so interesting.
Yeah,
and being American also is really I feel like tied to it. Also, is like United Statesian, I guess more specifically. Because of the mixed bag of histories that have brought Latino people here, that have kept Latino people here, from people who were here before it was the United States, which has been my own family story. Like we were just already here, and then it became the United States, and now, then now we're foreigners all of a sudden, and so just all of those different backgrounds that people are coming with seem to have coalesced in some of the same ways. And that has really just been, like I said, it's been eye-opening. It's also been really validating. Curiously, it has not made that anxiety like go away. Which I really thought it would have once it all started gelling, and I was like, oh crap, it's not just me. This is really cool. But then we were talking before the show started about that interview that I did before, like when I looked at her show and saw like, oh, this is a Spanish speaking show. Oh, I don't, she doesn't actually want me on the show. Like that can't be
right.
Right. It's almost as if everybody has that kind of shadow self that is like the platonic ideal of the person who inhabits Latin culture and also speaks fluent Spanish at all levels. And that's kind of one of the things that we love at the Ibis, is that working with the shadow self. And I think that theatre can be that kind of Jungian exercise of encountering that Spanish self. So since you're writing the play and working on all of this stuff, have you found that when you're writing and creating and doing all the project work, both directly and also all the side research and stuff, have you found that that's worked in the sort of like as a psychological exercise to help you work through some of your understanding of these things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have found it's been incredibly helpful to me just in becoming more comfortable in myself as a Latino artist. I guess specifically because I've always just kind of considered myself more like an artist who happens to be of Latino descent, because like of when I would describe myself in that way to say like, yes, I'm a Latino artist, every time I had done that before, I did feel like I was claiming something that didn't belong to me. So even as I'm still working through that as I'm writing this play, hoping, you know, is this contributing something valuable to theater as a whole, and specifically to a Latina experience, which is also not a monolith, and that's kind of part of what has been really important to be working against for me in writing this is this notion that when you are Latinx, Latina, Latino, Latina, that there's one way to be that. And like when, especially, you know, in the way it's talked about in the news, like talk about the Latinx vote and the Latino vote, and like it's always treated like a monolith, and it's just not. It never has been. But it's just been easier, I think, for more establishment, you know, people and industries and systems to view it that way, to keep it as an external thing. You know, that is the Latino stuff, and it's all the one thing, and we don't have to engage with it if we don't want to. And as a result of that, of growing up like in this country, you know, I as a Latino was not really exposed to very much Latino storytelling or to those rich histories that, had I been, you know, had those been in my home, like, and like with the generations living together and like been able to be passed on organically like that, maybe then, yeah, I would have had them all. But we grew up in Michigan, and like a lot of our extended family was across the country, and that's a normal thing to happen in the States, like for anyone, no matter what their background is. But like when that's your family setup, but also you're living in a culture that does not lift up specific stories, then you just kind of feel lost, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that actually flows nicely with what Joey said, because he said, do you feel more internal or external pressure when it comes to this? And he says, I forgive others for not knowing about my culture. Joey's from Hawaii. I forgive others for not knowing about my culture more easily than I forgive myself, even if they are in my culture.
Yeah. Oh my God. So first, thank you for asking that, Joey. That's a great question. Before I answer it, I'll just say, like, because I asked that same question of people when I'm doing the interviews about their relationship with the Spanish language. Like, is this something that just comes from you, or is it externally, you know, I'm losing the word, but motivated, I guess. But I've never had to answer it myself because I was all the one doing the interviews. So, both, and that's kind of what it's been the most common answer also, is that it's absolutely comes internally, because I know that when I'm feeling judgment about or feeling like a fraud by claiming my Latino-ness, I know that I'm thinking about it more than whoever I'm worried about. It's very much my own stuff, but at the same time, it has been reinforced by external elements, by the look. Like when my brother said that he felt like fraud to me, I knew exactly what he meant because I have felt it from other people. And I did a lot of work. I've worked a lot in the service industry, and I'm currently I work as a domestic violence victim advocate, and we're located in the city, and so we have a lot of Latino clients and Spanish speaking clients, and often when they'd come up to the window and we'd start to talk about what's going on, one of the first questions out of their mouths would be, when they look at me, "Oh, ¿tú español?" and I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. And then there's that, okay, well, and then, you know, try it. So it's that just that moment, look, like I know what the thought is, and it's also, even when it's coming externally, it's not, they don't know me. So there's not like they have bad feelings toward me. It's about them. It's about like, I've come to you in this moment wanting to express myself in this way. And now I can't. I have to deal with that. And then I can readjust. Even, you know, I just was talking about that specific work example, but I think anytime that's happening, when someone, a native Spanish speaker, approaches you to speak Spanish and you cannot join them there, of course there's going to be frustration. But when that external experience of like, is met with my internal, like, oh God, you know, it's just this perfect storm of identity crisis, I guess.
Right.
I actually really resonate with that, to be honest with you, as a mixed race person. Everything that you've said about not really having, like, I'm not all the way here and I'm not all the way here, I'm neither, but I'm both, that resonates so strongly with me. I totally get it. I fully understand. And so, like, there needs to be, and we in Michigan Theater, we're working towards trying to create this environment where our voices are heard, right? Where marginalized people are heard. And so as a Latina and LGBTQ plus artist, what are some ways that you can see for making these stages more inclusive for artists that are from those kind of communities?
Yes. Honestly, I'm a big proponent. I feel like we should all be telling specific stories. Tell specific stories about specific experiences and tell them honestly and tell them fully. And when you are seeing a specific story lay out in front of you, there is so much you can connect with, even when it's not your specific story. When we try to tell, I think, these stories that are just piecemeal and for everyone, that what is lost is these marginalized voices who are not always, we can't see ourselves in those images as much. But we just watched, last night, we watched it was up for Best Picture, Minari. Have any of you watched it yet? It was so beautiful, and it was so specific. It was this Korean American family who, like, the parents in the 80s, parents who were born in Korea but moved to California when they were a young couple. They had kids. They now have moved out to Arkansas and bought a farm. And it's, you know, the grandmother is coming from Korea and to now live with them. And so it's just this very small family on this, like, trying to build this farm in a rural white community, finding other Korean people and sort of connecting with them, but then sort of not. And so it was like, none of these things were my lived experience, but because it was all so particular and honest and true, I felt deeply with every single person in that movie. And I think that is one of the strongest ways that we can lift these marginalized communities and make them more present in theater, is telling the stories and telling them truthfully and well, and not feeling like, you know, there's like a quota to meet as far as, you know, like, are we telling this type of story this year? Or like, have we told too many gay stories this year? You know, like, it's not about that. It's about, I don't know. I'm not saying anything new here. But it's just like, you know, being true and honest and specific, and not being afraid to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think you hit the nail on the head with, like, not trying to hit a quota. Like, oh, did we do too many gay shows? Well, you know what? Did you do too many straight shows? How about that?
Right.
Like,
Right.
how about that quota? They're all straight shows. So how about, you know, so it's like, yes, let that voice, the actual voice, be heard. Don't write caricatures, write characters.
Right.
You know, real people, human beings on paper can come to life on stage. But if they're not humans on paper, it's hard, you know? Like you said, if you're telling a story that's not specific, that's kind of out here, it's like, well, what do I have to attach to? What do I have to hold on to? So I really appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see less generalized musicals, man. I'm with it. Like, you know, in general, or just these very, I don't know, shows where there's supposed to be a universal appeal that we all know that the universal applies to a very specific white middle class audience that's come and, you know, been saving up for tickets for whatever. I don't know. I'm with that, and I think that there's so many ways we can really encourage new stories to be told in Spanish on stages that people can still relate to, because they're human stories, not, you know, universal stories. So yeah, thank you. I've got a question. So some of your other work has a choose your adventure vibe, and we kind of love that. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the other works that you've put together and kind of how, you know, you write a lot from your experience and how that translates for you to the stage?
Yeah, totally. Okay. So this play that I'm writing now, that I don't speak Spanish, this is, I think, the most personal I have ever written for a fictional piece. I mean, I do a lot of journaling. I used to do a lot of blogging, and now my blogging is just making a long Facebook update, basically. And I have no problem being personal when it's like a nonfiction, when I'm just telling my own story or like, you know, whatever. But in writing fictional characters, I've really, I don't know, like this is closer than I've ever come to my own self, and it's been really uncomfortable, but like good uncomfortable. Like it feels important to be doing before I would continue to tell other stories like with the same, I guess, like sensitivity and nuance that like I know I would need for someone else to be telling my own. So I think it's important for me to be going through this process. So, but before I've been writing this play, like I said, the other stuff that I've done has been a lot less personal, but really, really fun. So the Choose Your Own plays, that started from, we were doing this project through something called the Stage Door series at a local theater here in Harrisburg, Gamut Theater Group. And my husband and I have been involved with them for a number of years. Currently on the board for the Stage Door series, which is their sort of side lineup of Come As You Are, Pay What You Will, theatrical pieces that are usually like smaller in technical elements than they are in just professional quality acting and classic stories told in new and exciting ways. And so we've been involved with the Stage Door series for a long time, and we're down in the basement just like hanging out, talking. We got some old Choose Your Own Adventure books on the bookshelf, and we're just like spitballing like, wow, what if we did like an adaptation of Choose Your Own Adventure? Because at this point, I've done adaptations of Legend of Sleepy Hollow, of Beowulf, of Edgar Allan Poe stories, all the Dracula we had done, and my friends, and so we're like, well, then we can do this, right? And just as a joke, kind of at first, but then kind of really started to look at the nuts and bolts of how we would do that, and it boiled down to sort of creating a game-like experience for a live theater audience, and then taking the text that was there in the book, adapting it like any other. And so those two Choose Your Own plays were adaptations of Choose Your Own Adventure published books. So we had to purchase the rights to adapt them. We did not, interestingly, the authors who retained the rights to those books don't actually own the rights to those words, Choose Your Own Adventure. So we did have to change the name because we can't step on that copyright. But it was, and we built our own choosing structure for it. So it was separate from the what they built to create those books. We built a new type of choice structure for theater. But Jen just took this story and adapted it, and it was a hit. It was really, really fun. So the first one it's called Space Vampire, and the notion is that you are a new recruit in the Space Force, and there are space vampires out there, and there's one in particular who's causing a ruckus. And we don't know that in the very beginning because your first choice is you've graduated from Space Force Academy, and the adjutant is telling you like, hey, which mission do you want to go on? Do you want to go on this extra super special secret mission, or do you want to go on this scanning mission to planet Neblar? And then everything stops, and the host comes on. It's blackout. Host comes on, starts talking directly to the audience, and it's time to choose. And so we put the choices up on the screen. People voted on their phones what they wanted to do. They got 30 seconds, and then it's just a matter of like what the audience majority chooses, and then whatever direction they go, that's the next scene we see. They've made that choice, and so the actors, the way we're able to write and do the show is, we have each scene kind of rehearsed, and we know at the end of this one, it's a clean break and then a clean set to whatever's coming next. And so they're in those 30 seconds am I getting into this costume or that costume?
Right.
And they go, and if you die, then you die, and you get so many deaths per show. And the goal is to get the good ending. And so people went wild, man. Like at the beginning of the night, and they're like, I don't know what this is. Sounds fun, sounds goofy. And in the first choice, everyone's really quiet, like stressed out, like I don't know what to do.
Gotta get this right.
But by the end of the night, it's like the 30-second counter starts. And I was also hosting, and so like I'm talking to the audience, like, okay, here's the choice, and you can do this or that, and goading them and taunting them. And by the end of the night, it's like I may as well not have even been saying anything because everyone's just screaming at each other. Like, oh, we gotta go here, we gotta fight the vampire. Like they're just like standing up in their seat, just like yelling across, and I was like, ah! And like you could see like the bars moving on the screen as people are voting, and it was just a hoot every night. It was so fun.
I love that. There's this, like way to make audience participation fun and engaging and not awkward and as hell.
And those were adaptations, so we couldn't just keep doing them. And I really wanted to like get them published and stuff, have other theaters produce them, but that was going to involve a bunch of stuff and then dealing with some other company to get the rights to do that. So those pieces are their own thing, but we have the structure that we built, and so now it's just a matter of crafting an original story to do that. And we will be doing some more choose your own plays. The actually pre-pandemic, that's what I was working on with another friend of mine from Gamut. We were writing a project that will be continued again soon, and that'll be really, really fun to show to the world.
Can't wait.
Oh yeah, we really need to talk in more detail off camera about the structure you're using, because we love choose your own adventure stuff, and I always used to love the really bleak dead ends that you get in some of those books. Like one of my favorite ones is the one where you end up with just gangrene. It's like one of the ones where you're caught in a cabin, and like you get caught in this loop, and then you're like, oh god, I recognize this passage. I'm back to the foot.
Yes. Yeah, the second one we did was called Hijacked, and it was about these kids on a bus that get hijacked, and like they have to like figure out a way to get home in time for Christmas. And one of the deaths, and so we have these 3 child actors playing like the kids. They were so like so funny, and they were originally, they had been the narrators for Space Vampire. So like it was great having them all on stage together. And one of the deaths in that one is they just get like chucked into this pit, and so it was just super bleak and real dark. All of a sudden, to just have these kids like, ah! They're like actual 11-year-olds like on stage.
But that's really great because that's the kind of immersion that, you know, people get in stage and in live theater that you can't get in other places. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing. We love applications of immersion. So, you know, obviously you were creating stuff and you have that other project there. So, you know, let's talk a little more about like immersion in theater and audience participation and not necessarily shattering the fourth wall, but certainly making it more porous so that, you know, people can.
Yeah. No, like, and I think theater is inherently immersive just from the fact that we all have to be there together in that space, as opposed to any other artistic medium. It's like everything else, well, so many others rather, are the artists or the team of artists create it and then they put it out into the world and then people do what they want with it. And theater is not that. Theater is you are, you know, sometimes 10 feet away, sometimes maybe like 50 feet away or whatever, but like you are within the same room as these actors who are feeling these raw emotions, you know, or screaming, and you can see the spit coming out of their mouth. You know, like you can feel the heat coming off of their bodies, and they feel that from you, from the audience. And like, I think it's just immersion is built into the whole structure of what we do, and so I love that. I loved being able to play with that with this project, and I know that there's people who get really high anxiety about like if they're in an audience and like an actor like interacts with them or something. I think it's kind of fun, but more than like that kind of like token, hey, you're in the show now. Like I really just appreciate when a production just uses that space, even just recognizing that the action of the play does not necessarily fully exist on this floor space here of the stage, and then this is all sacred where the audience is. I like when the space itself, you know, when you're forced to engage with the story in a more visceral way, I guess, is kind of what it becomes as an audience member. We went to Broadway in the before times, and we saw, I guess it might be Harry Potter, The Cursed Child.
Yes.
We saw that, and there's this moment, I won't give any spoilers, but there's this moment where and we were like up in the nosebleeds, and it's like a scary moment, and all of a sudden like the lights go like strobe lights and lightning, and words were written all over the entire theater on the walls, behind me and above us, and I'm in the very back row of this theater, and I could look, and all of a sudden, and when the lights were on, normally it was just a wall, very pretty wallpaper, and all of a sudden I'm in this like climactic moment of the show, and I'm surrounded by horror, and it was so cool, even though like the rest of the play, it's all happening way down there. All of a sudden it was all around me, and it was just so exhilarating.
Jealous, and well, can't wait for that one to come back.
I was just gonna say, I am so jealous of you. Like, I can imagine just sitting there. Was it kind of like blacklighty? Is that what happened? Was there like blacklight effect, or it just showed up?
It just sort of showed up because it wasn't. I don't know. I don't know how they did it, because it was like white light. It was like all dark in the space, and then white lights are shining everywhere, and now all of a sudden there's just this horrible, awful like glyphs, like or like I don't remember even like what the content of what, because it was like The Shining, The Shining send up in The Simpsons when all the writing's everywhere. It was like that, and
it's so cool,
incredible. Like the things that come out of people's minds, I swear, like we might think that we are creative, and then next thing you know, somebody comes up and does something, and you're like, how did you even do that? Like, what?
Yeah.
So as artists, I definitely want to like give props where props are due. So tell me, beyond yourself, who else is, when we're bringing it back full circle, who else in the Latina community is out there doing similar things? Who else is out there like blowing people's minds, expanding the way we can look at stage and art, live and otherwise? Give me some names. Give me some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, there is a woman named Melinda Lopez who she's written a number of plays, but the one that is just most important to me is called Sonia Flew. My husband and I saw that in 2007 at the Steppenwolf Theater, and it was the first time I had seen a Latina character central to a piece, and part of the piece being her struggle with identity. And oh God, if you ever get an opportunity to read or produce or see Sonia Flew, do it. And she just recently worked with a couple different translators and has now done the piece completely in Spanish. And they just premiered that, did a world premiere through Zoom with Teatro Chelsea in Boston. I want to say they're based out of, yeah. So strongly recommend Melinda Lopez, looking at her work. Chiara Alegría Udes is also an incredible Latina playwright, and is specifically like part of her mission is elevating the Afro-Latinx experience as well. And like in particular to just the general Latino experience, which again is not a monolith, and in which Afro-Latinx voices have often been excluded due to the same white supremacy that excludes them from other spaces. So Chiara Alegría Udes does incredible work with her pieces. There is, and I haven't been able to experience their work yet personally, but just in following their work, there's a company called the Labyrinth Theater Company. I think they're based out of in New York, but I learned about them because there's an actor named David Zayas, who is not me, but who is in Dexter and movies. 16 Blocks with Bruce Willis, like yeah, he's done a bunch of stuff, and so I've looked him up sometimes. We're like, what's David Zayas doing these days? That's when I was like, he's done a lot of work with the Labyrinth Theater Company, and I was like, what's that? And then I saw like, oh, they're specifically about raising Latinx voices in theater, and so I really kind of follow that. I'm like, what's Labyrinth doing?
So cool. You're like, hey, what's my TV doppelganger up to these days?
Yeah.
So you brought up horror earlier, horror shows, first of all, with Cursed Child, and that's some of your work. You guys have created some, Dracula. You've worked on taking some classics, and I would love to know more about like just your experiences with producing horror on stage, right? Because it's different than when you're working on a film project, and especially if you're working with classics. Like, how have you all worked, or what have you found is successful to kind of create? Not recreate, but like create those moments like you're talking about in Cursed Child, where you have this moment of like, I am in a theater right now and I'm terrified. What do I do? So.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm a big fan of physical theater, especially where horror is concerned. I think the two lend each other, I think it lends very well to horror. Because you can get this, and for physical theater, I don't know if we're all familiar with it, but it's just very body focused, and so it's not really based in realism when we're like, I'm just an actor and I'm standing here telling lines, I'm going to move like a normal person moves. It's I'm an actor. I'm telling lines, and also part of my body is dancing away from you as it's happening because it's showing you some other sort of entity. Or now these 6 actors who you've just seen be in the scene are now climbing on top of one another and becoming a new image kind of deal. Like, I love that type of stuff, and I think it works really well when you're setting a spooky kind of vibe, especially when you can have this sort of like chaos happening around characters who are like maybe like, you know, having a really intense personal moment that's just them as actors, like face to face, and everything else is sort of shifting around them until all of a sudden an image becomes clear where like they are in danger is what's happening here. That's what all those bodies were scurrying around on stage about, because they're becoming this monster.
Go. Carry. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna like spin yarns about like times.
Well, I was gonna say, as you're, you know, doing things about the different approaches of different cultures and different cultural viewpoints, have you looked at more things which are Spanish language horror versus, you know, English language? And for example, Dracula. Have you seen the Spanish Dracula?
I have
was
not.
made at the same time as the Bela Lugosi Dracula, because they would close down the set, and at nighttime an entirely new cast came on and made the movie, but for, you know, the Mexican market and the Puerto Rican market, not like other markets that were primarily Spanish language.
Yeah.
And it follows the actual Bela Lugosi movie, but the performances are so very different because it's obviously an entirely different cast. And I love the pathos, and slightly there's also some bathos in the man playing Dracula. His look of like crestfallen horror when he doesn't please Harker is something Bela Lugosi doesn't get. You know, and I love that because he's bringing his acting training that, you know, came in, and there's cultural things there that he's bringing in, and I kind of love seeing that kind of interpretation.
That is so fun. No, I hadn't even heard about that. I like that.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard about that either, but how incredible is that to think that. So you're saying that they were made at the same time, like both movies were just being made, one in the day and one at night? Like that's so cool.
Yeah, they were making like for example, you know that like if you watch the Bela Lugosi movie, an armadillo runs across the screen. I don't know why, but like, because it's not part of the movie, and yet it's in both movies. They bring in an armadillo to run across the thing like it's a weird hell beast. Shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were doing 12 hours of English Dracula, 12 hours of Spanish Dracula.
Right. In case you forgot that you were filming in LA.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I like that idea, Tori. Yeah, I'm curious about that one too. You want to ask? Sam?
Yeah. So we do ask all of our guests, our esteemed guests, one very important question. And since we're talking about horror and how wonderful Transylvanian armadillo, since that's what we're talking about right now, I think it's safe to say that we all have a little bit of love in our hearts for horror and that whole little genre, shall we? So can I ask you, what made you fall in love with horror? What was that thing, that show, that event? What just made you go, oh.
Okay, so can I give a long answer?
Yes.
So first, we haven't talked much about this tonight, but I do love horror. So thank you for asking that. A few friends of mine and I have something called the Hot Potato Horror Club. It's primarily a messenger thread where we just talk about horror movies, but like pre-COVID and now like as we're getting all vaccinated, we will be returning to going out and doing excursions together and like seeing new horror movies together, and giving our opinions on them. And it's so fun, and I'm so glad to have found them. Helped me through some dark times. So when I fell in love with horror was probably at age 7 when I watched It far too young. Yes, yeah, because it fucked me up, man. Like, could not get over those images. Knew that it was fake.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Knew that it ripped open a part of me that had never been ripped open before. And I knew that I don't know, I just kind of longed to keep experiencing that. And I know a lot of people don't like that awful feeling, which makes sense because it's kind of awful, but I don't know, I did. And I knew from jump, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm into this. Because compared to that, all these other horror movies that I was seeing around that age, I was like, Monster Squad's not quite horror, but like werewolf movies, just all the other stuff. It was not anywhere near as scary as it was. So all of a sudden, everything else was like a lot safer too. And I think it wasn't until I was much older by the time I saw a scary movie that really got me to my core the way that one had. And by then, I'd already built up quite an immunity.
Oh my goodness, our stories are completely parallel when it comes to that. Honest, I grew up with it. I couldn't take a shower by myself. I'm 33 years old, and still to this day, if I'm in the shower and my eyes are closed for too long, like because I'm washing my face, I gotta like just to make sure that like the thing, right? It's like, but that's the beauty of horror, that it can come with you through your generations. That we saw that when we were kids, and we're grown as adults right now, and still just as excited about it as we were back then. And that's the magic. That's the magic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Do you guys like? Can I pitch a genre to you?
Please.
Because I haven't seen it really discussed, but I feel like it's definitely already emerged as like a subgenre of horror, and but I call it grief horror. Hereditary, I think, was like, for me, has been the pinnacle of this genre so far. But I would also include in the genre Babadook. I would include The Ritual, which is available on Netflix. I would also include The Orphanage, or El Orfanato, which is Spanish, but you can watch it with subtitles. But it's all of these horror films that are horror, but also are very much about the protagonist's unsettled grief. And that pain and that grief is the source of, at first, and also but part of the horror that they go through, even if the horror also is a ghost or some other monster, or like a demon. But like that has really become my jam as far as like horror movies goes. Like those are my favorites. Like that sort of grief core thing. I don't know. Your thoughts?
I love it. Oh my god, it's so exciting. And sorry, I had to grab my charger, everybody. So just for the last 5 minutes apparently. But so you couldn't see my face as I was just like, yes to all the movies that you named. Because I think you're right, and I think there's something kind of to your point about what it, I think, did for a whole generation of kids. And I think the new one was pretty successful with it too. At least the first one. Is this idea of connecting your psychological, it becomes a psychological horror that is attached to something personal that your main character is trying to overcome. So whether it's grief, and usually it's grief of some sort. Midsummer, I think, is another one of those. You mentioned Hereditary as well, and like this amazing ability to unpack trauma, go through some shadow work, like kind of going back to our, theme here of kind of using art as therapy to uncover things. And I think you're right. Horror has this ability to dig deeper into that through this genre you're talking about, this like kind of grief horror genre, where you can really feel connected and on a different level than like a monster flick can maybe do, or somebody horror might be able to do for you. It just hits a little differently, I think.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up the Babadook, because the Babadook is... So the Babadook exists as a kind of ironic LGBT thing because of a mix-up on Netflix, right? But you can still read it as such. But it isn't a personal LGBT thing. It's the mother recognizing that her tiny child may actually be gay. And there is that thing that rather than fighting it, as may have happened in a previous decade, she instead learns to accept and negotiate with. And it's also about grief and negotiating with grief. It really is one of the most Jungian shadow worky movies. It's just a superb film for so many of those readings. It's about not trying to destroy the hard truth.
Yes.
But to actually work with and find a place of comfort with. And I love it for that reading that you could have. So good.
That's I am so glad that you have joined us today. Today was a wonderful, wonderful day. I learned quite a bit from you, and I'm so excited that we've now officially become best friends over it.
Yeah. It's been an honor talking with you guys. Thank you so much for having me on your show and for being interested.
Likewise, and all please feel free. Let me see if we can put up our ticker again. Feel free to keep posting in on and checking out David's work as he continues to work on his project. I Don't Speak Spanish, and you can follow that along at his Facebook page. And also is just a fabulous person. So keep your eyes out for work happening in Harrisburg. Real quick before we hop off, what are things looking like over there for opening up? Are y'all going to be able to do something maybe in a park soon, or?
So Gamma Theater is they'll be doing their Free Shakespeare in the Park this year. They have a small cast of their core company actors with a couple of extras who have been vaccinated so that they can safely rehearse and be in that space together. That's been big to the local theaters here, is not just the audience safety, but also artist safety. Because it's one thing to say like, oh, we're going to do all these things, keep audience in there, but how are you going to rehearse a play with people in a space together if they can't do that safely? So that's been a big thing is that our theaters have been concerned about, and I'm glad that they're all finding ways to make that happen. So yeah, they'll be doing their Free Shakespeare in the Park. Gamma's actually kind of been incubating this project with me now for a couple months, and we're going to be, once we have the first draft ready, we're going to do a private read to get some feedback, and then the public read will be in the January of 2022. It'll be at Gamut. Ideally, it's going to be in person, and it will be coinciding with the Shakespeare Theater Association conference, which will be happening in Harrisburg at that time. So there'll be all people in Harrisburg, and you can come check out the first public reading of I Don't Speak Spanish, and hope to see you guys there.
Yeah, plans for January vacation. It'll be great. Well, thank you again, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight at the Ibis. You're going to see us again in another month, and we are cooking on our own project right now. Tori, do you want to give maybe a little sneak peek detail about what we've been having brewing in the cauldron?
Yeah, I'm just going to give you guys a little nugget, a little tidbit of information here. We are in the process of writing a show called Gratuity Not Included. It is a show about the restaurant industry, about the service industry from the point of view of service industry people. So we've actually been conducting some interviews. We've been having some roundtables, and we're picking the brains of people who have worked in the industry, who've been on the ground floor, management, back of the house, front of the house, all that jazz. And we're going to talk about some stuff, some real stuff, some heavier stuff, some lighter stuff. We're going to really show the humanity and the culture of being in the service industry. And we're going to ask you, audience members, to ask yourself some questions. I don't want to give too much away yet, but it's going to be a fun little ride, guys. So keep a lookout for gratuity not included coming this summer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Super excited. I want to make sure that I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight. I saw some new names out there. I saw Brenton. Hey, Brenton, I haven't seen you yet, so thanks for joining us. Of course, Joey, we love that you join us every month. Bridget, you join us every month. Thank you guys for being our OG fans. And everybody else who's joined us that we couldn't see, that's all right, we didn't see you, but I'm so glad that you joined us. If you have a friend or somebody who has not had a chance to catch it, head to shadowoftheibis.com, where our previous episodes are, as well as some other stuff. You can check out some other things that we've done, some shows, and get to know us a little bit better, y'all. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Reed.
Yay!
We're heading out. Signing off, the Ibis. Bye, guys.
Bye.